Hello and welcome, it's the Crocheteer here, and today I'm going to be showing you how to crochet. So in this video we're going to be covering the basics of what you need to know to crochet. I can tell you that all the patterns I've made on my channel only use these few techniques, so you can get away with crocheting anything by only knowing these five simple techniques. So we're going to be going through how to tie a slip knot, how to chain, how to single crochet, how to half double crochet, how to double crochet, and how to finish your crochet off once you've done. We'll then also look at how to increase and decrease. So, to start off, we're going to learn how to tie a slip knot. So, it's very exciting. I've got a new ball of wool here. Just going to open this up. How unsatisfying. I thought it would peel open beautifully. Well, it didn't. There we go. So, just find the end. There we go. I'm using white so it's nice and clear for you to see. And so, to tie a slip knot, how I do this is I hold it between the wool. I hold the wool between my fourth finger and my thumb. I wrap it over my pointing finger. I then bring it across the front of the wool between my fingers and put it behind. So I wrap it around the front, around my finger and behind. Now that's pulled relatively tight, but don't let go, you can still hold on to that. Now I pull this loop looser and poke the wool through with my middle finger, grab the wool I poked through and pull it tight. And there is our slip knot. So you can now put that on your hook, and if you pull the bit of wool which is still attached to the wool, you will see it tightening up to the hook. So now we've done the slip knot, I'm going to show you how to chain. This is how you start off almost all crochet, unless you use the magic circle, which I prefer not to use. I prefer to use chains to start. So, to chain, you get the wool, which I personally hold by having it over my pointy finger, and then I hold it down with my little finger. And then I just hold on to the other piece of string, the cut piece of string here. So, to chain, you hook the wool with the hook, so you wrap the hook behind the wool and then you pull it through the slip knot loop. Don't pull too tight, but make sure it is secure. And then you repeat that. So for another chain, you wrap your hook under the wool, hook it, and pull it through. Some people would also call this putting the wool over the hook. However, when I do it, I move the hook, not the wool. I find this lets me do it much quicker. So, I've done 6 chains so far. I'm going to do 9 chains altogether. So, there are my 9 chains. This is because we're going to do 8 stitches in a row. This is another important rule with crochet. When you do rows and you're starting your chain, you always do one more than you need. So I want to do a row with 8 stitches. but I do 9 chains because when it comes to doing my first stitch, I need that last chain to make it so that the row goes up straight, not at a wonky angle. So, to single crochet, you insert the hook into the stitch. Now, as you can see, a stitch has 2 sides. This side, where you see 2 lines of wool, and the other side, where you see 3 and it's all a bit more messy. I always have the side with 2 facing towards me. Now, when it comes to where you put the wool, the hook, when you insert it into the chain for the first single crochet, you skip the first chain, so that's the chain right next to your hook, and you go into the second chain from your hook. Now, I like to insert my hook so it has 1 bit of wool below it and 2 bits of wool above it, but it doesn't matter if you have 1 above and 2 below, or if it's inconsistent. So, now that my hook is inserted, you wrap the wool around the hook and hook a loop of wool through that hole, through that chain we did. Now you should have 2 loops on your hook. Now remember, we're doing single crochet at this point. I know I did go off on a few tangents, but we're doing single crochet. So now we hook the wool with the hook, so it's nice and hooked, and then we pull the wool through both of our loops. That will give us our first single crochet stitch. So now we're going to repeat that 7 more times. So we're going to insert our hook into our stitch, pull a loop of wool through, and then pull the wool through both of our loops. So we insert the hook, hook the wool through, and hook the wool through both loops. We're going to do this until we get to the end of all of the chains that we did at first. And there we go. There is our first row of single crochets. Now we're going to do a second row. In this row, I'm going to show you how to half double crochet. This will give us a slightly taller, fatter stitch, but it's not as neat or as strong as single crochet. To start this next row, we're going to do 1 chain. This is so that we stay with the rule where we always do 1 more chain than we have stitches to give us the lift for the next row. Now, once you've done that chain, we're going to flip our crochet over so we have the side which looks like this facing us. It has a few more bumps than the side we originally had facing us. So with that side facing us, we're going to wrap the wool around our hook before we insert the hook. So we're going to insert the hook into the first stitch behind the 2 lines we see. So this is similar to when we had the chain, we would see the 2 lines on top. Well, now we want to insert our hook below both of the loops. We then pull the wool through, and now we have 3 loops on our hook. So we're going to now hook the wool again and pull it through all 3 loops. Now we're going to repeat that. So you hook the wool, you then insert the hook into the next stitch, you pull a loop of wool through the stitch, and then you pull the wool through all 3 loops. So once more, you wrap the wool around the hook, you insert the hook, you once again hook the wool and pull a loop through the stitch, and then you pull the wool through all 3 loops. Now we're going to repeat that until we get to the end of our row. So here we can see a direct comparison between the 2 types of stitches. We can see the smaller one down the bottom and the longer one on top. Now we're going to do the longest type of stitch that I ever use in crochet. Now I have only ever used this stitch when making a granny square. In any of my other patterns you will not need to know this stitch, and in fact you hardly need to know the half double stitch for any of my patterns, because I almost solely use the single crochet stitch. So, to do a half double crochet stitch, not a half double, to do a double crochet stitch, what you're going to do is chain 2 this time. We're going to chain 2 because it's a much longer stitch, and this will ensure the row stays nice at the edges. Now, to do this stitch, we're going to once again hook the wool around the hook. We're going to insert the hook into the crochet like we did before, and we're going to pull the wool through the stitch the same as before. So it's very similar to the half double crochet. But this time, when we pull the wool through the 3 loops, we're only going to pull it through 2. So here you can see I'm going to pull the wool through 2 of the loops. That will make another loop, so we still have 2 loops on the hook. Now to finish off the stitch, we're going to pull the wool through the final 2 loops. That makes us the longest stitch yet. So, if we go over that again, we're going to wrap the wool around the hook, insert the hook into the stitch, pull a loop of wool through the stitch, and then we're going to hook the wool through 2 of our loops, and then through the last 2. And once more we're going to wrap the wool around the hook, insert the hook into the stitch, the next stitch, pull a loop of wool through the stitch, and then pull the wool through 2 of our loops, and then through the remaining loops. With this stitch you can see it's relatively wholly, whereas with the single crochet stitch there's hardly any holes. This is why single crochet is much stronger, because it's much denser. It's much less stretchy as well, however, which is why when I make my phone case, which you can see up in the corner, it's made with half double crochet. This is so that the case is a little more stretchy. So, if we finish off this row, I'll just show you once more because I went off on a bit of a tangent again. We're going to wrap the wool around the hook, insert the hook into the crochet, pull a loop of wool through, and then pull the wool through 2 of the loops and then through the remaining loops. So if we now do that 4 more times to bring us to the end of our crochet. And there we have our 3 types of stitches. Now for our final type of stitch, we're going to do the slip stitch. This stitch is good for joining bits of crochet together, for example the circles, and if you make a hole, I know I've made hoods in the past which I've used the slip stitch on. It's just very good at joining things, also at strengthening things, like if you're making a long pole, or for my Easter chick, which I'll now put up in the corner, I used slip stitches for the legs to add a bit more strength. So, to do this, we're just going to do a chain. We're now going to turn the crochet over, and slip stitches are incredibly easy. We're going to insert our hook into our first stitch, so not the chain we just did, but the first of our 8 stitches. We're going to pull a loop of wool through, so at this point it's similar to the single crochet. However, with the single crochet we pull a loop through both of these loops here. With the slip stitch, however, you simply pull the loop, the first loop, through the second loop. So you insert the hook into the stitch, and pull the wool through the stitch, and then the loop on the hook. See, this doesn't add any more length to our crochet, but it does strengthen it, and if you do lots of it, it does end up adding length, but it would be a long and boring process, so I wouldn't advise it. So, you insert the hook into the next stitch, pull the wool through that stitch, and then straight through the loop on the hook. So we'll do that for 1 row. And there we have our crochet. Now, the final thing, which I'm going to show you about stitches and how to crochet before I move on to how to increase and decrease, is how to finish. So, to end this bit of crochet here, we're going to cut the wool that is currently coming off the crochet. Now, we're going to pull this short bit of wool through the loop from our hook, and now we can discard the hook. Then we simply pull the wool, and you'll see the loop tighten around the wool, and that will secure it. So now when I finish most of my projects, I will then weave this bit of wool in and out of the stitches just to hide it, but we're not going to cover that today because it's incredibly easy to do. You literally weave the wool with the hook in and out of the crochet. So now we're going to do increasing and decreasing. For this, I'm just going to do a very simple setup. So I'm going to do 4 chains. This is because you have to have some crochet set up. And now I'm going to do 3 single crochets. Remember, I did 1 more chain, then I'm doing single crochets so that it would go up the edge correctly. And there we go. So here's our tiny little bit of crochet. This is what I'm going to be using to demonstrate. So, I'm going to chain, and I'm going to do one more single crochet. So, this is a good example. Say you're halfway through a pattern, and you wish to increase. To do an increase, if you're single crocheting, half double crocheting, or double crocheting, it doesn't matter. I'm going to show you with single crochet, but the theory is the same. What you do is, you do one stitch like normal. So if I'm single crocheting, I'll just do a normal single crochet stitch when it tells me to increase. The difference is, instead of moving on, I'll then do another one of the same stitch in the same hole. So now I'm going to insert my hook back into the same hole that I did my last single crochet in, and do a second single crochet. Now, when I do my final single crochet of my row of 3 stitches, I have 4 stitches because one of my crochet stitches here I replaced with 2. So if it says increase, you simply do 2 of the same stitch into 1 of the previous stitches. So with half double crochet it would be exactly the same. You'd do 1 half double crochet stitch, and then you'd put the hook back into the same hole and do another half double crochet stitch. Now to decrease, I'm going to just chain 1 and do a single crochet to get us ready for our decrease. For a decrease we want to make 2 stitches into 1 stitch. So to do this, we're going to insert our hook. Now this is for single crochet. It would work the same with double crochet and half double, but I will show it this time as it's a little more complicated. We insert our hook into our stitch and pull a loop through. Now we're going to insert the hook into the next stitch as well before we pull the wool through any of the loops, and pull another loop through. So this is for single crochet. We're now going to pull the wool through all 3 of those loops and then do our final single crochet. So now we can see the row which was 4 after increasing is back to 3 because we took 2 of these stitches and turned them into 1 stitch. Now I'm just going to unravel, so if you want to undo your work you just remove the hook and pull the wool until you're ready. So I'm now going to pick up this loop here again. For half double, you would wrap the wool around the hook, insert the hook into the stitch and pull a loop through. Similarly, before you pull the wool through those loops, you're going to put the hook into the next stitch, pull a loop of wool through, and then pull the wool through all 4 of those loops. You then do final half double crochet into the last stitch. So, I think you get the idea. The double crochet is the same. You do a double crochet, but before you pull the wool through 2 of the loops and then another 2, you'd put it into the next stitch and pull a loop. So I hope you found this easy to follow, and I hope you now feel confident in how to crochet. So if you enjoyed the video, please hit that like button and subscribe for more free and easy patterns and how-tos just like this. And enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks for watching.